Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Thursday, August 26th, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that page and click on the the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner of the page, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book provides a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships. It's also a tool that I use to help me turn any negative emotional experience into part of the infallible guidance system that we've all been given. You can also download the actual tool itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click on the link, download it, print it off, and use it as often as you'd like. You can also go to your App Store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, and before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the link, the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download, or it will download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do that soon and often, because it usually leads to comments, questions, testimonials, etc. And then you can give us a call at 563-999-3581 and do that and press 1, and it'll put a little question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce you by your area code. We're also doing the Course in Miracles lessons from the workbook. Today is the 238th day of the year, and that means the lesson reads, On my decision, all salvation rests. The commentary is, Father, your trust in me has been so great that I must be worthy. You created me, and you know me as I am. And yet, you placed your offspring's salvation in my hands and let it rest on my decision. I must be beloved of you indeed, and I must be steadfast in holiness as well, that you would give your offspring to me in the certainty that he is safe, who is still part of you and yet is mine because he is of himself. And so again today we pause to think how much the Creator loves us and how dear his offspring are, created in his love, and how close they remain to him whose love is made complete in its offspring. The Pam Grout Course in Miracles experiment lesson for 238 is titled, An Aria to Possibility. She quotes Lana Marie as saying, spiritual practice is just training our minds towards reverence, like moving a potted plant to a sun, Prometheus to a rock, etc. Nah, no thanks. Look around. There are French cheese and wine, Mozart and bossa nova, love and sunsets. These are all ours for the taking. Surely the God, he, she, the way of mastery that Yeshua saw as a child. He saw the shimmering radiance behind the images of the physical. And he kept working to see, he would ask in his meditations and prayer, how to see his brothers and sisters the way their Creator would see them. And the more he went into that meditation and did those exercises, the more he got to see this energy that, the words he uses for it in the way of mastery are the shimmering ray, close quotes, when my thought maker, i.e. my squirrely brain, is just doing what squirrely brains do, running thoughts. It certainly doesn't mean that's who I am. I can use my, quote, I am, close quotes, to argue my limitations, or I can use it to speak truth with a capital T. I am free. I am blessed, and I am joyful. In this lesson, that's the end of the lesson. In this lesson, basically what she's talking about is what Michael Ryce refers to as regulatory speech. If I say I am depressed, I train myself to believe that's my true nature. If I say I'm experiencing this energy that's uncomfortable, or if I say, as they recommend here, my thought maker is temporarily malfunctioning, I program myself to understand the essence of me is not just my thoughts. I create and I continue to reinforce the understanding that my thoughts come and go, but my essence as a person, as a valuable part of creation, never changes. And as I train myself with making those statements, thinking in that pattern, I correct that thought-making machine. I correct the beliefs with repetition. I train myself to be, as this Lana Marie says, to be in a spiritual practice that's just training my mind towards reverence, training my mind to something more true, more accurate, more productive. So that's our Course in Miracles lesson and the Course in Miracles experiment commentary from Pam Grout. And we've got about 50 minutes left. How can we support you today? What would you like to talk about? What's on your mind? How can we be of service? I'll tell you one thing that's on my mind is Susan Bingham, bless her little pointy head and loving heart. She talked yesterday about, in the second half of the show with Dr. Ryce, she talked about Byron Katie and Byron Katie's podcast number 17. And I will highly recommend that. Byron Katie's work, if you haven't figured this out yet for yourself, let me just share that my mind tells me that Byron Katie's work is almost exactly like the work we do here on Mindshifters Radio and the work you can do in the reality management worksheet. And it's got only a slightly different process to it. And as Susan was pointing out, Byron Katie is very gentle, very thorough, very loving in that podcast as she helps a person work through a whole series of negative beliefs and his pouring mind energy into these negative thoughts and suffering. He's literally creating tortured emotional experience in his mind. And in the course of less than an hour that she was working with him in that podcast, the whole podcast was a little over an hour, but at the end she takes comments from other people. But in the course of that less than an hour that she was working with him, he decided to be honest enough. He decided to actually do the work that Byron Katie steps people through, to question his thoughts at a deeper and deeper level, and to do what essentially is at the root of Michael Ryce's worksheet, which says, I cancel my need to be right. He was willing to do that. And when he did, he started to get access to a level of perception, clarity in perception, broader, deeper understanding and perception than was possible when he was holding on to his belief, whatever the negative belief was, and insisting that he was right and the people that hold any other contrary belief are wrong. And I would hope that you would go to wherever you have your podcasts and you just type Byron Katie and you look for her podcast number 17 and you're off and running. That beautiful example of the work of her simply using the questioning, she has a worksheet that'll help you step through the questions, and staying loving and staying open is available free. And if you want to invest an hour of your time, you'll hear another masterful coach, therapist, support person step somebody through this. It's Byron Katie. Her podcast is titled At Home with Byron Katie, and this is number 17, titled Vaccine or No Vaccine. So now I've had a lot of thoughts about this over, the morning. I know some people want to say, but Michael Ryce's work is better, or Byron Katie's work is better, or Guy Finley's work is better. And if you want to do that, you can. But what I strongly encourage you to at least try is listen to these, get exposed to these different teachings, philosophies, even theologies, and look for the similarities. Put on the filter of looking for what's the same. I remember when I first encountered Michael Ryce's work, and I would talk to Michael about the way of mastery or something else, and he would just push away, and he would say, no, that's wrong, and they don't know forgiveness. And I would just gently keep coming back and saying, and there's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of similarity. And it has blessed my life more than I can say. To take away that we become the joyous witness of a stupendous cosmic drama is to let those energies flow through us. And as Michael Singer would tell us, to resist the urge to grab onto certain energies that we prefer and push away certain other energies that we dislike, and instead just listen to the entire symphony. Watch the whole play. Be
sweetly served by him being in his rage and his pain and his trauma and his grief about loss and losing her? Or do you suppose her being would be served by him being the space of great delight, joy, and the presence of love? Which is going to serve her? Let's think of this from the side of the person who's leaving their body. If you think in terms of someone leaving their body as needing support, obviously, if he has nothing in his carbon-based memory, remember we've talked about that situation with Yeshua that's brought up in the Thomas, where the Pharisees are kind of railing all over Yeshua, and the disciples say to him, basically, they say, why don't you sock it to them? Why don't you give them back some of their own medicine? And Yeshua's response is, I have none of that in my store. Can you conceive of a world where each and every one of us stands with nothing based in hostility or fear in our store, that is in carbon-based memory, and we live in and as the presence of love? with and for ourselves and with and for each other. Obviously, if someone's leaving their bodies behind, there's going to be
belief that's generating these thoughts that generate these negative emotional states. My life has gotten better by leaps and bounds as I tune into the fact that my negative emotional states, my tension, are best used by me as an indication of an alarm system in me in response to the filter that's set over my intentions, and it's going to be using those intentions keyed to hostility to build my goals, so my behaviors are going to be flowing from hostility and either attacking somebody else or defending against attack. Even if there isn't one there, I can perceive attack when there's no attack there. Another option is I could have fear set over in the frontal lobes of my mind. And that means I choose intentions keyed to fear as the building blocks of my goals. And then I see the world as a dangerous place, and I respond in defense or attack. Third option, I have Rachma set over the frontal lobes of my brain. And these allow that when that filter is set, it allows only intentions keyed to love, to the truth, to be used as the building blocks of my goals, which means I can only act from that loving space. And the image that came to me years ago when I heard Dr. Ryce talk about this is, here's this, for those of us of a certain age, we remember there would be a spotlight on a stand on the ground, and it would be plugged in. It would be just a plain white light. And then when it shined on something, it would show you what the thing was actually, whatever color it was. But they would put in front of that spotlight a spinning translucent wheel, and 1/3 of it would be set with a blue-colored plastic, translucent plastic, and 1/3 would be red, and 1/3 would be, yellow or pink or whatever. And or in this analogy that came into my head as I was listening to the Dr. Michael Ryce, instead of blue and red and green, it would be blue and red and clear. And so the analogy is the spotlight, the light of awareness is the spotlight. And the light of awareness, if there's nothing distorting it, it's going to show me the truth.
When does one understand the difference between changing circumstances versus surrendering and accepting them and just being with them? I'm going to put one example. How about somebody who is...
What does that bring up for you? How does that fit? How does that feel?
It feels really good. And I realized that
It makes everything look the way it actually is. And that's the image I got in my head. When Rachma is set in my mind, over the frontal lobes of my mind, I get to see things as they actually are. When there's hostility set as the filter, I get to see things through an angry, bitter, resentful filter. And when it's set to fear, I get to see things through a fearful filter. Each of the techniques that we've just mentioned and talked about, every single one of them, in their own way, is built around the realization that this is what drives my experience of life. So whether it's Byron Katie's questioning, or Michael Ryce's worksheet, or Guy Finley's stories and exercises, or Ho'oponopono, or the Sedona release method, or Dietrich Wolzak's work, all understand that as I give up my need to be right, as I question and open to seeing something differently, as I dismantle the negative, the false. I'm going to know it's false if it's negative or fearful or sad. My perception opens in a way that my conscious logical mind cannot achieve. Remember, in these teachings, my conscious logical mind is intended to be a servant. Way of Mastery says, excuse the language, but your conscious logical mind is intended to be a very stupid servant. Servant of what? Servant of life, servant of the energy of creation expressing through you, a servant of the higher mind, the Christ mind, the one mind. The words don't really matter. Michael Ryce likes to quote this scriptural passage that says, the eye is the lamp of the soul. If the light for you is darkness, how deep shall your darkness become? And with the understanding they have from the ancient Aramaic translations from the Khabouris manuscript, he said, a better way to understand what they were getting at there, when you understand the idioms and you understand the words they were using and the context of it, they're basically just saying, look, your conscious logical mind, your perception, as it registers in your conscious logical mind, is supposed to be a guide for you to navigate life in the physical realm. So you don't walk into open manholes, and you don't fall off cliffs, and you don't drive your car into a line of traffic. That's all it was meant to be. Just a way to navigate in the physical realm. It wasn't intended to help you navigate through emotions and relationships, etc., and the complexities of life and all this range of energies that our senses can't perceive. It's just there to help you navigate through the physical realm and stay safe. And if the light that you're looking through, if the filter you're looking through as you look at the world is darkness, meaning if it's, in the ancient Aramaic, that meant if any form of hostility or fear, what it means is you're not seeing clearly. Your lights are out. Your perception is going to be so distorted that it's going to, if you act from that when your hostility or fear is up, it's going to lead to more and more problems. Well, how many of us are waking up and looking at the world and saying, hey, we've got more anger, we've got more fear, we've got more road rage, we've got more wars, we've got more political tension. That's what's happening when people are not seeing the world clearly. So, if the light for you is darkness, how deep will your darkness be? If you keep walking around throughout the world with a blindfold on and earplugs in, you're going to bump into a lot of things that aren't so pleasant. You're going to get bruised and beaten, and perhaps even worse, because you're not seeing the world as it actually is. You're looking through a lens, that is distorting your perception so profoundly. This is how people can be in a relationship 1 minute with somebody saying, I love you, you're the light of my life, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, I love you, you're perfect, and then 10 minutes later, you better change, I can't stand being with you. How dare you do that? If you truly loved me, you wouldn't do that or that or that. That can only happen when my perception has become distorted. If my perception were accurate, I would be able to see myself through that loving filter. I'd be able to see that I'm this miracle of life expressing in form, and that everyone and everything around me is also that miraculous energy of creation expressing in form. Not everything they do is a reflection of that, but their essence remains the same. So, if you want to give yourself a treat, tap into the Byron Katie podcast, Byron Katie at Home, I think it's called, but number 17, Vaccine or No Vaccine. And as you do, I encourage you to look through the filter of looking for the similarities between that work and Michael Ryce's work that we offer here on the Mind Shifters Radio. So our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. What's on your mind? Well, how would it be of service to you to spend the rest of this hour? I will remind people that this is a Thursday, so we have a Mind Shifter support group available absolutely free tonight, 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central. The information about how to join that is available at mindshiftersacademy.org. And I'll remind people that yesterday we released, or I guess it was Tuesday, we released the On Your Mind podcast episode of me interviewing Robert Whitaker. And that's a gentleman who's written several books, 4 or 5 different books, but 2 powerhouse books on mental health treatment, the anatomy of an epidemic, and Mad in America, tracing the history of mental health treatment in America from the 1700s to today. And he was gracious enough to let us interview him for the On Your Mind podcast, and that's available at journeysdream.org/podcast. And since it's announcements time, I will also once again request your support, your help. Let us know, like Susan did yesterday. She listened to this podcast with Byron Katie. If you listen to a podcast that really lights you up, or you think is very similar or in line with this work, or you've read a book that you think would be beneficial for us to read, and or if you know an author or a speaker or a presenter that you think would be useful for us to interview, either for the On Your Mind podcast or the Mind Shifters Radio, give us a call, 563-999-3581, or send me an email at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org and give me your suggestions. I would be grateful. We have an upcoming integrative mental health symposium, and that's one of the Journey's Dream is going to be co-hosting that. And you can find that at Integrative Mental Health Summit.org. You can find out information about that and how to. It's going to be a virtual thing, so you can join through the internet. It's in October. I'm trying to pull up the website. But I believe it's integrativementalhealth.org. So, what's on your mind? How can we support you today? 563-999-3581. Call that number and press 1. Thank you, Susan. What is on your mind today?
Well, I just heard you talking about this Integrative Mental Health Summit. And is this something that is for people who are trying to help people with mental health problems? I'm talking about a friend of mine, the same friend I've mentioned before. She has a daughter who's 28 or 9, still living at home, diagnosed bipolar. The mother is in dire distress because they can't afford treatment for her, and she's a very bright young woman. So would this be something that my friend and her daughter might take part in, or is this more professional instruction type of thing?
There might be interesting things for her, resources.
Is there a fee for it? Do you know?
There is, but there's also a way to get in for little or nothing. I mean, it's not a. One of the things that they're doing is trying to help people who need it. So if these people can't afford the $25 or whatever it might be, let me know and we'll find a way to get them in. I'm not sure what. I think they're going to companies and saying that the fee for an individual to register is like $125 or $150. The virtual ticket is $25, minimum donation. But they're going to companies and saying, "Hey, look, why don't you sponsor all of your employees at $25 a head?" And then the companies can send the money to the people who are running the summit, and then any of their people can join for free. But if somebody much a standard kind of a seminar where you go and there's different presentations throughout the day, and then breakout presentations you can go to at different hours. You could pick from 3 or 4 different presenters and pick the ones that are interesting to you. And then the next day they would do the same thing. So now they're learning how to do it virtually so that they don't have to worry about getting shut down by coronavirus restrictions.
That's great. Thanks. Well, I do have a question, and it harkens back to lesson 237, which I think was yesterday. I forget which lesson. Anyway,
that was yesterday, 237.
There is a sentence in there. Well, I'll read the whole thing because it's only a paragraph, but there's a jarring sentence toward the end of the first paragraph. Today I will accept the truth about myself. I will arise in glory and allow the light in me to shine upon the world throughout the day. I bring the world the tidings of...
Or really have my eyes on their video picture. Yes, it is quite useful. As a matter of fact, since this...
Being exaggeratory, like John, who showed up and spoke the truth and lost his head.
So have you spent time really acknowledging yourself and being with the contribution that you made in holding that space? Or was your carbon-based memory also looking at you as John the Baptist?
Maybe both. I definitely am aware now of like an echo of I could have done better. I should have been stronger.
Well, you know what to do with those goals, right?
Yeah, cancel.
I'd offer they're your next worksheets.
Yeah, let me just cancel my goal to do it different or be better.
And it's perfectly fine to have a goal to do better at anything, including a circumstance like that. However, if you load that goal in your mind and it resonates...
perception than we do, and that's okay. But when we get cranked up into a negative emotion about it and we pour our energy into the argument, every time that happens, what's happening there is what just was happening with you. We are misreading the truth of what is. We are misperceiving actuality.
I heard that. That's good. I got it. I've been occasionally reading Richard Rohr's daily meditations. There's an awful lot of wonderful stuff coming through the pipes now, so it's impossible to tend to them all. But I was reading his summary of his writings for 1 week. And it's a quote by Beatrice Brutto. It says, "God does not play favorites. God loves all equally. Children of God are supremely safe in his love, parenthesis, but not protected in the world." So, and children of God are themselves capable of this kind of loving. So I took that parenthesis, but not protected in this world, to reinforce my misreading of the lesson. But she does say we are not protected in this world. And so of course that set off my alarm systems.
Right, but what does that mean? Right? Well, what does it mean? You have to get inside the head of the person who wrote it. But from another level, at another level of this work, we understand there's nothing in us that needs to be protected. There is nothing in us that is vulnerable, able to be hurt. There is nothing of value that can be taken from you, and nothing of value that can be added unto you. Right? In my attack thoughts, I create the danger that I think I'm exposed to. There is no danger unless I misperceive myself as being subject to pain and suffering. If I'm living in the dream of separation, if I'm living in that dream of death that the Christ mind sees through, but if I am not viewing it from the Christ mind, what I view is a bitter dream of struggle and death. But if I'm seeing it clearly, I realize there's nothing for me to be protected from. And I don't know if the person that you're quoting in that, email understands that, or if they're coming from the misperception that we're, weak and vulnerable and can be buffeted around by life, or that who we are can be threatened in any way. I don't know.
Yeah, it certainly sounds as if she has a thought in that direction.
Is this the one you sent me about expanding our capacity to love?
I don't think so. This is a summary that's issued every Sunday where Richard Rohr makes a summary of the basic message of each of the meditations that appeared during the week. I think what I sent you was one of the ones that came during the week. I don't know what day that was, though. Yeah.
This was one where the person who was Carol Houselander, and she died in 1954. She describes riding a subway and seeing Christ permeating and radiating through all her fellow patients behind the physical image that shows up in the human mind. And the news is that is possible for all of us to develop as a lens for our perception, as a questioning that we can, learn to live in that questioning state. And what we're clearly being called to understand from all these great teachings is that we do not know. We cannot know so much of the things, and especially those things that we use to create our upset. You remember from that talk with Byron Katie, with what's his name, about the vaccines, no vaccines, right? The whole thing is, in Byron Katie's work, when I start to question my beliefs, whenever they lead me to negative emotional state and I question them, I come to realize when I open, when I'm soft, when I'm honest at deeper and deeper levels, I come to realize, you know what, I cannot know that this is true.
Yeah.
My mind wants to tell me it's true. I've been generating all of these negative emotions based on the belief that all of this is true, when in actuality, when I do the prayer, I do the meditation, I sit with it, I open to it more and more, just asking about the truth of it, not asking some outside authority, but really sitting with my own understanding at whatever level it is, what I come to realize is I can't know. And all of the knowing I've been doing has left me a mess, left me creating all of these negative emotions. And once I see the truth of that, the pain, the negative emotion, the suffering that I've been generating from it falls away. And there's lots of good videos with Byron Katie working with people and having that kind of an experience. But this is just an exceptionally good, hot topic for today example in her podcast number 17.
Yeah.
So
it is very good.
So, what do you got for us? How should we spend the next 10 minutes?
Well, just a couple of thoughts. One is an image, and one is I heard a quote the other day, and I know I'm going to botch it some, but God said, I can't tell you how it pains me to see you suffering. But I also can't tell you how much more it would pain me if I got in the way of your suffering or got in the way of what you needed to learn as a result of that suffering. That's just a quote, and I can't tell you from where it is, but I've been thinking about that.
Well, isn't it a part of the Byron Katie work that we were just talking about, that she talks so much about how this life, our time on earth, is our school. We are here to learn these things. Isn't that part of that message? Yeah. Well,
I imagine it is. It's just that it's an acknowledgement by God that these lessons do involve at least pain, if not suffering. And I know there's been a distinction made between pain and suffering. You know, here I am with a stitch in my side, but I'm not suffering. I do feel pain, though. I mean, it's very easy to see the difference between those two on that level, but it's harder to pick them apart.
Upsetting negatively for him. Mm-hmm. That's one example that comes to my mind regularly about the difference between physical pain or discomfort and suffering.
Right. It's excellent. True. Well, I was thinking about a woman in the park. There's an Asian woman who walks in the park who has a very wooden walk and a very wooden expression. And when I greet her, she'll lift a hand in a robot-like way and then put it down again, as if she's acknowledging that I've greeted her, but she won't look in my direction. Then I realized that she's not alone in the park. Way ahead of her is a man walking. And I see her nearly every day in the park at a certain time. And finally today I stopped and I said to the husband, they're both quite young, and he didn't go into a long song and dance about how hard it was. I just said, you're a wonderful man to take her like this every day for a walk. It must do a lot of good. And he nodded and he said yes, and then we went on. But I'm looking at them and saying, this is a picture of suffering, but I'm just putting mind energy in it. Yeah. it might not be suffering. I don't know what it is. It just is.
Yeah, that's another good example. Some people will create a lot of suffering around that. Other people, I was in a session. Let's see what today is. Today is 2 days ago. I was in a session with a 48-year-old man whose mother is, she's got dementia. Whatever form you want to call it, it's just she doesn't track things like she did a year or two ago, and it's coming on rather quickly, and so we were talking about his getting 30, 40, 50 calls from her in a day asking the same thing over and over again. And and until they, just recently were able to get her into a memory center. So now she's in assisted living memory center. And so now he doesn't have to answer the phone every time she calls because he knows she's safe. And we were just talking about the various ways he could be processing this and how fascinating it is if you're not caught up in the emotions of it, to watch how her brain is working. And that's what he was able to do. He was able to step back and say, it's just amazing which things she does remember and which things she doesn't, and which things she uses in a repetitive cycle. And when she breaks out of them, it's fascinating. Now, he could also, and he has times, when he looks at that and he says, I'm sad that my mom basically isn't here anymore, right? Like the essence of her and the way that they would relate as mother and son is gone. So that's a possibility. He can generate sadness from it, but he can also just generate fascination at this display of the way the human, that Michael Ryce would call it the carbon-based memory, is working or not working the way it used to. But that's not the essence of who she is, right? That's just the carbon-based memory. That's just the functioning of the physiology and the neurons. And so if he looks at it that way, he has fascination, and if he looks at it as though that's my mother, he can generate sadness and loss. But it is an internal process within me that either generates the fascination or the negative emotional state or the suffering over the way things are. So, thank you for the call, the comments, the questions, and I will mute you so we can make the transition. And I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Welcome, Jeannie Ryce.